What if the most powerful decision-making tool you own has been sitting dormant your entire life, waiting for you to finally understand how it works? Why your brain's fastest processor beats logic every single time? Think about the last time you walked into a room and instantly knew something was wrong. No words exchanged, no obvious signals, yet every fiber of your being screamed danger or discomfort. Most people dismiss this as paranoia or overthinking. What if I told you it is actually your most sophisticated cognitive system doing exactly what millions of years of evolution designed it to do? Your brain processes thousands of environmental cues simultaneously, cross-references them against stored experiences, and delivers a conclusion before your conscious mind even formulates the question. This isn't mystical intuition. This is high-performance neural processing that operates at speeds your verbal thinking can't match. And here's the kicker. You can train the system deliberately. Elite operators across every domain rely on this mechanism. Fighter pilots make life or death choices in fractions of a second. Emergency room doctors diagnose rare conditions based on subtle patterns that escape standard protocols. Chess grandmasters see winning moves instantly while amateurs calculate for minutes and still miss them. What separates these performers from everyone else isn't supernatural talent. It's 10,000 hours of pattern recognition compressed into automatic responses. Their brains have cataloged so many scenarios that when faced with a new situation, the neural pathways light up instantly with the optimal solution. No deliberation required. Pure cognitive efficiency born from disciplined exposure and feedback loops. Here's what nobody teaches you. Your conscious, verbal thinking is actually the slowest part of your cognitive system. By the time you've articulated a problem and started analyzing options logically, your subconscious has already processed the situation through multiple frameworks and arrived at a conclusion. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio spent decades studying decision-making and discovered something remarkable. People with damage to brain regions responsible for emotional processing couldn't make effective decisions, even with perfect logical reasoning intact. Why? Because emotions and gut feelings aren't obstacles to clear thinking. They're essential components delivering processed information from neural networks operating beyond conscious awareness. The problem most people face isn't lack of intuitive capability. It's systematic suppression of signals their brain keeps sending. You've been trained to distrust anything that can't be justified in a spreadsheet, to dismiss feelings as irrational, to privilege slow analysis over fast pattern-based processing. This made sense in stable environments with clear rules. But we don't live there anymore. Modern complexity demands speed and adaptability that pure logic can't provide. While you're gathering data for a rational decision, someone with trained intuition has already moved 3 steps ahead. If this resonates, subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. What ancient warriors understood about your brain that science just confirmed? Let me ask you something. How did Roman legionaries maintain perfect formation during battle chaos while modern executives can't focus through email interruptions? The answer reveals everything about cognitive mastery our tech-saturated culture has forgotten. Those ancient soldiers underwent brutal training that wasn't just physical. They were programming their nervous systems through repetition until response became automatic. What they called discipline, modern neuroscience calls procedural memory consolidation. Your basal ganglia, deep brain structures invisible to conscious awareness, store practiced sequences and execute them flawlessly when context triggers activation. This isn't about muscle memory. This is about training your brain to recognize complex patterns and deploy optimal responses without conscious intervention. Here's where it gets fascinating. Expertise in any domain fundamentally changes how your brain processes information. A master mechanic hears an engine problem in sounds that seem identical to untrained ears. An experienced investor spots fatal flaws in pitch decks that dazzle everyone else. A seasoned detective catches micro inconsistencies in witness statements that others completely miss. These aren't special powers. These are neural networks sculpted by thousands of hours observing patterns, making predictions, and updating internal models based on feedback. Your brain literally rewires itself around the activities you practice consistently. Neuroplasticity means every expert was once a beginner who systematically exposed their cognitive architecture to relevant pattern sets until recognition became instantaneous. The strategic implication is massive. You don't need decades of random experience to develop reliable intuition. You need deliberate exposure to high-quality pattern data with immediate feedback. This is why simulators revolutionized pilot training. Instead of waiting years to accumulate enough flight hours to handle emergencies, pilots face hundreds of crisis scenarios in virtual environments. Their brains develop the same neural pathways as combat veterans, but in compressed timeframes. You can apply this methodology to any skill domain. Study historical case analyses. Run mental simulations of complex scenarios. Deliberately practice pattern recognition. In your field, you're accelerating the natural learning process that usually happens passively over years. But here's the critical distinction separating trained intuition from random hunches: calibration through ruthless feedback analysis. Every intuitive decision you make generates data. If you act on a gut feeling and succeed, note what signals your brain was processing. If you ignore intuition and regret it, analyze what you missed. If you follow a hunch that fails, study why your pattern matching misfired. This metacognitive loop is where mastery lives. Your brain constantly updates its predictive models based on outcomes. The question is whether you're doing this consciously and systematically, or letting it happen randomly. Drop a comment if this clicked for you. Why machines will never replace this uniquely human advantage. Here is an uncomfortable truth that terrifies AI evangelists. Algorithms dominate in structured environments, but collapse when ambiguity enters the equation. You know why? Artificial intelligence requires clear patterns, massive training datasets, and defined parameters. Human intuition thrives precisely where these conditions break down. When you read subtext in a negotiation that contradicts the literal words being spoken, when you sense team dynamics shifting before anyone voices concerns, when you identify a future trend based on weak signals that didn't show up in any data analysis yet. This is parallel processing of contextual information at scales and speeds that current machine learning can't replicate. And it might be the most valuable skill you can develop as automation handles everything else. Consider what happens in truly complex human interactions. Hostage negotiators describe an almost supernatural ability to sense when a captor is about to surrender or escalate violence. They're not psychic. They're unconsciously integrating vocal micropatterns, breathing changes, word choice evolution, cultural context, and hundreds of other variables into holistic situational awareness. Now try programming that. Try creating an algorithm that processes emotional state, personal history, real-time stress indicators, cultural nuances, and hidden intentions simultaneously while adapting to unprecedented scenarios. Current AI doesn't come close. Even as technology advances, it lacks the crucial element: lived experience integrated with emotional intelligence and contextual understanding that humans develop naturally. This means trained human intuition becomes increasingly valuable as automation spreads. While machines assume repetitive tasks and rule-based decisions, humans who navigate ambiguity, interpret nuance, and make judgment calls in novel situations become irreplaceable assets. Look at leaders you respect. They're rarely the smartest people in traditional metrics. They're the ones who sense the right direction when data points contradict, who make bold calls based on conviction when experts disagree, who spot opportunities invisible to conventional analysis because their intuition detects emerging patterns before they crystallize into obvious trends. But understand this clearly: intuition without discipline is just bias and wishful thinking. High performance requires integrating analytical rigor with intuitive perception. You use data to inform, but intuition to decide in complex contexts. The difference between brilliance and delusion is calibration. Your intuition works best in domains where you've accumulated deep experience. A surgeon's gut feeling about diagnoses is reliable. That same surgeon's intuition about cryptocurrency investments is probably noise, unless they have studied that domain equally intensely. Knowing your boundaries is crucial. If this content is helping you, hit that like button. It helps the channel continue. Let me tell you something that contradicts almost everything you've heard about performing under pressure. Most people think stress destroys decision making, and that's partly true. But there's a specific kind of stress that can sharpen your intuition like nothing else. Think about it. Combat soldiers report moments of extreme mental clarity in the face of incredible danger. Athletes describe flow states where time seems to slow down, and the next move becomes obvious. Surgeons operate with absolute precision in life or death situations. What's happening in their brains? When your brain detects a genuine threat, your limbic system, which governs emotion and memory, goes into overdrive. Adrenaline sharpens your perception. Your focus narrows, cutting out all distractions. And your intuition, which has been trained over years of experience, takes command, while your conscious, verbal thoughts step aside. But here is the part nobody talks about. This only works if you've done the work beforehand. Intense stress reveals the training you already have. It doesn't create new skills out of thin air. If you've never practiced making rapid decisions in your field, stress will just paralyze you or push you into making bad, impulsive choices. But if you've built a solid foundation, if you've trained your brain to recognize patterns, stress will activate your high-performance automatic mode. This is exactly why elite operators spend thousands of hours in simulations. When the real pressure hits, they already know what to do. Now, let's look at the other side of the coin. Silence and clarity. Your intuition speaks quietly. It doesn't scream at you like anxiety or fear. To actually hear it, you have to create mental space. The constant noise, the endless multitasking, the fire hose of information fighting for your attention, all of this buries the subtle signals your intuitive system is trying to send you. Think about historical leaders. They had something most modern executives have lost: time to just think in silence. They walked alone, they kept journals, they spent hours considering huge decisions away from the pressure of artificial urgency. This wasn't a luxury, it was an operational necessity. It was how they accessed deeper layers of their mind that only show up in stillness. So if you want to develop reliable intuition, start by eliminating the noise. Turn off your notifications. Block out uninterrupted time in your calendar. Practice mindfulness not as some spiritual exercise, but as neural training to separate the signal from the static. When you quiet that chattering voice in your head, you will start to notice things that were there all along. A subtle feeling of discomfort in a certain situation, a natural pull toward a specific choice, even bodily sensations that are telling you yes or no long before you have a logical reason. These are real messages from your intuitive system, and ignoring them is like throwing away a supercomputer you already own. We are living through the biggest technological revolution in human history. AI, automation, augmented reality, and we can't even imagine what's coming next. Everyone is asking the same question: how do I stay relevant when machines can do everything better? The answer is right where nobody's looking: in your ability to process what machines cannot. Things like ambiguity, emotional context, ethical judgment, and reading complex human dynamics. These aren't just minor details. These are the skills that separate leaders from followers, visionaries from operators, the people who create the future from those who just react to it. And all of these abilities depend on a trained, disciplined, and reliable intuition. Think about the next 10 years. The jobs that will thrive won't be the ones based on following rules and processing data. They'll be the ones that require navigating complexity that you can't reduce to a simple algorithm. Therapists reading emotional subtext. Strategists identifying patterns before they even show up in the data. Negotiators who just sense when to push and when to back off. Leaders making courageous decisions with incomplete information. All of them rely on that inner voice whispering the right answer before their logical mind even gets there. And the crucial point is, this isn't a gift you're born with. It's a skill that you cultivate through practice, honest feedback, and constant refinement. So, how do you start? Begin by just observing. Pay attention to your gut reactions in everyday situations. When do you feel that inexplicable sense of unease? When does something just feel right, even without any clear evidence? Make a note of these feelings. Then, track the outcomes. Was your intuition correct? What can you learn from the times it was right and the times it was wrong? This simple cycle of awareness, action, and analysis will accelerate your intuitive development like you wouldn't believe. Combine this with deep immersion in your field. The more patterns you expose your brain to, the more sophisticated your intuition will become. But there is a final level that very few people ever reach: meta-intuition. This is the ability to sense when to trust your intuition and when you need to demand more analysis. This is true mastery. You develop this through intellectual humility and brutal self-observation. It means recognizing your own biases. It means understanding which situations make your intuition reliable and which ones make it deceptive. It means actively seeking out opposing viewpoints before making a big decision. This constant process of calibration is what transforms your intuition from simple guesswork into a precision instrument. If this video expanded your thinking, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. Let me know in the comments which part of this hit you the hardest. Thanks for watching.